This is the part we want to create. The unit is in millimeters, and this part is symmetric about this vertical plane, so we want to use the mirror feature for this part. And my plan is to create this center cylinder first with a hole, and then create this side extrusion, and then this vertical tombstone shape extrusion. The reason we can't do this side extrusion and the cylinder as a one extrusion is because there's a small little gap here, 2 millimeters, so we need to do 2 different extrusions. So we'll create a new document, and using millimeter unit template if you have. Otherwise you have to make sure that your unit is correct from the lower right corner button here. And we'll use the top plane for sketching plane and create an extrusion, and we'll draw concentric circles at proper dimensions. So this will be 38 millimeters. The inner hole is 20 millimeter diameter. And then we'll extrude it upward, and the height will be 20 millimeters. Now we need to create this side extrusion, so we'll use the top sketching plane and make an extrusion. And I want to see normal to that sketching plane, so if you press the space bar, this orientation dialog pops up, so normal to. And I'll just create a rectangle here and make sure that endpoint is on this cylinder, so I want them to be coincident. And you can draw a center line from the origin of the sketch, and if you move your cursor around, that's the midpoint of this line segment, so make sure they are connected, and then make sure that this is horizontal if it's not drawn horizontally, so add a horizontal constraint if it doesn't have it. So now this center line is fully constrained. Now as I move my rectangle, it'll be symmetric about the center line. So right now it is specify the size of the rectangle. So this distance from the center to this end will be 33. And this width of this rectangle will be the diameter of the top cylindrical surface. As you can see here, the width of this rectangular extrusion will be the diameter of the top cylindrical surface because they are tangentially connected. So the width will be twice as large as the radius, which is 18. So this will be 9 times 2. So now we created this sketch and we want to extrude it. I just created a rectangle, and that is because this area here that will be intersecting with a cylinder, I think there will be no feature in there in the future, so I just created a simple one. If you're concerned about the this area, what you can do is you delete that section, select the circular edge and choose the convert entities. Now this circular edge becomes another sketch entity, and this area you need to trim out, so I'll use the trim entities tool, power trim. I just drag my cursor over it, and then this portion of the sketch is eliminated, and only this arc will be left, so we have a closed profile left. So even if you have some other features in here that may intersect with a sketch entity, it won't interfere. So this is another way you can do. So I have this nice clean region, so I can extrude it down. So flip the direction, and how far do we have to go? So our sketch is on the top surface of the cylindrical surface, and we are extruding down, and we know that this height of the cylinder is 20 millimeters, and we have a 2 millimeter gap, so this extrusion depth will be 18. But it depends on your design intent. If this height will be always 18, you can just specify the length by using the blind option. But if your design intent is that this gap between the bottom surfaces are important, as indicated in here, you added the dimension of 2 millimeters between them, then you might want to use that offset distance as your dimensioning. So what you can do is using the end condition, and there is an option called offset from surface. So choosing that, and here you need to select the surface. So select the bottom surface, and how far you want to offset is 2 millimeters. So make sure that your offset distance is in the correct direction. If it's not, you can just reverse the offset by clicking on this option button, reverse offset checkbox, but this is the correct one. So I say OK, and then you get this extrusion. Okay, if you double click on this, you have this 2 millimeter dimension. So this is your design intent, that that gap is important, and you have the control on the gap. Now we need to create this tombstone shape. So we'll use this end surface as my sketching plane. So I'm going to extrude that, create a sketch. Again, I'm going to look at normal to that sketch plane, and need to draw the shape. Click. And make sure you close this sketch, otherwise it'll be an open profile, so it'll try to create a thin extrusion. So you created this sketch, and I need to add a dimension. So this radius of the top arc will be 9. Well, you don't have to do that actually, because the width is already defined, and the radius will be half of the width. The reason why it allowed me to add dimension is because this vertical line is still blue, and when I drew it, it looked like a vertical, but it actually is not. So just click it and add a vertical constraint, and now this turns to black. And another thing is, let's show the relation. And although it looks like they are tangent, but they are not tangent. So we need to add a tangency here. Select both line and arc and add tangent. Now if you try to add a dimension, radius dimension, it'll complain because you're over defining it. Now we need to add the height of this shape. So let's look at normal 2, because that distance is measured from the bottom here, and that will be 41. The sketch is fully constrained, and I need to extrude it. Let's look at the other direction, and how far do we have to? It's 12 millimeters. Okay. So depending on your design intent, again, if this hole may or may not be there, if you want to make a design alternative without hole, then it's recommended that you create this hole separate as a separate feature. So now you can draw a circle and create a extrusion path to make the hole. Or if your design is such that that hole has to be always there, then it might be easier to just add that hole in the sketch. So here I'm going to draw a circle, and the diameter will be 10. If I exit from the sketch, that hole is there. Okay, so that's just a half of it, and I want to mirror these two features. So this Boss Extrude 2 and Boss Extrude 3, I want to mirror this about this right plane. So I use this mirror feature, and mirror face plane, I'll use the right plane, and features to mirror, I will choose this Boss Extrude and Boss Extrude 3. So as you can see the preview, they are mirrored. Now we need to create the hole right here. How can I create a hole on a cylindrical surface? There are two ways. One is you need to construct a plane here that is tangent to this cylindrical surface and maybe parallel to this vertical planes, or you can simply use the plane in the middle. So right here, the front plane, and using the plane, draw a circle in the plane and cut in the frontal direction. So that'll be easier because we don't have to create any reference plane. So I'm going to draw a sketch on that front plane. Again, I look at normal to the sketch, draw a circle, and its diameter will be 7 millimeters, and the height from the bottom will be 10, and this is still blue, so I need to add a constraint that the center point should be just above the origin and align them vertically. Then the whole sketch is fully constrained, so this circle is in the middle, so I can use the extrude cut. I will flip the direction and I'll cut it all the way through, so that way we'll create this hole. Now let's create fillets with radius 1 and select the edges. Let's show the full preview. Select the edges you want to add fillets. Let's create one. Create another.